The detention cell wasn't as bad as Cole had expected. Clean, well-lit, even had a sleeping platform that didn't look designed to maximize suffering. Still a cell, though, still locked, still the endpoint of a mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. Lieutenant Cole Harper sat on the platform, inventorying his injuries. Nothing serious, just bruises and a splitting headache from the stun weapon that had taken him down. His team had gotten out. That was what mattered. The extraction mission had been a trap, and he'd stayed behind to cover the retreat because someone had to, and leadership meant being that someone. He'd expected interrogation by now. Maybe torture, if the Velrani were less honorable than intelligence suggested. Instead, he'd been given medical attention, decent food, and 12 hours of uninterrupted silence to contemplate his imminent future as a prisoner of war. The door opened with a smooth hiss. Cole stood automatically, military reflex, and found himself facing someone who definitely wasn't a standard interrogator. The Velrani woman wore robes that spoke of serious authority, her long ears decorated with precious metals that marked high status, her bearing suggesting someone who'd never been questioned. 2 guards flanked her, but she waved them back and entered alone. "Lieutenant Harper," she said, her human standard flawless. "I am Queen Myra of Velrin. We need to discuss your situation." Cole's brain tried to process why a queen would personally visit an enemy captive. "Your Majesty," he said, because defaulting to respect seemed wise when confused. "You are officially listed as an enemy combatant who violated our territorial sovereignty." Myra got directly to business. "Under our law, that carries a sentence of not less than 20 years imprisonment, possibly execution if we determine your mission constituted espionage." "Understood." Cole kept his voice level. "For what it's worth, we were extracting hostages, not spying. I know, we've verified your mission parameters." Myra moved closer, studying him with intensity that made Cole uncomfortable. "Which is why I'm offering you an alternative. Alternative to 20 years in prison, I'm listening. Marriage to my daughter. In exchange, you receive immediate freedom, full citizenship, protected status, and the political backing of the royal house." Myra delivered this like she was discussing trade agreements. "You have 24 hours to decide." Cole's brain completely stalled. "I'm sorry, what?" "My daughter, Liara, was widowed 3 years ago. By our law, a widow of her status cannot remarry within Velrani society. She is considered claimed by death, untouchable except through very specific legal exceptions." Myra gestured precisely. "One such exception is bonding with an outsider species, which nullifies the widow restrictions." "You want me to marry your daughter so she can remarry?" Cole was still trying to catch up with this conversation. "I need her to remarry. For succession laws, political alliances, stability. She cannot do so with any Velrani noble. You, however, are legally viable." Myra's smile was thin. "You need freedom. I need to solve a political problem. This serves both interests. That's not exactly a choice. That's coercion with extra steps." "Yes." Myra didn't deny it. "But it's coercion that benefits you significantly more than 20 years in a cell. And before you argue ethics, consider that remaining captive helps no one, while accepting helps both you and my daughter." Cole sat back down, his head spinning. "Does she know about this offer?" "She knows I was seeking a solution. She doesn't know I've selected you specifically." Myra moved toward the door, then paused. "You have 24 hours. Use them to think carefully about whether you prefer freedom with complications or captivity with principles." After she left, Cole stared at the walls and tried to process the most surreal negotiation of his life. Marriage to an alien princess or decades in prison. When he put it that way, the choice seemed obvious. But the way Myra had framed it, benefits you significantly more than 20 years in a cell, suggested there were complications she wasn't mentioning. He didn't sleep well. The next morning, Cole requested something he suspected was unusual. "I want to meet her, Liara, before I decide." The guards who delivered his breakfast looked confused, but they relayed the request. An hour later, they were escorting him through the royal complex, still under guard, still technically a prisoner, but being treated with confusing courtesy. They brought him to private gardens, lush and carefully maintained, where a Velrani woman sat on a bench overlooking a fountain. Her long ears were decorated with silver that gleamed against dark hair, and her posture carried weight that had nothing to do with physical bearing. "Princess Liara," the guard announced. "The human prisoner, as requested." She looked up and Cole saw grief in her eyes that time hadn't healed, just taught to hide. "Leave us," she said quietly. The guards obeyed, retreating to a respectful distance. Cole stood awkwardly, unsure of protocol. "I'm Cole Harper. I asked to meet you before making a decision." "Sensible." Liara gestured to the bench. "Sit. We should speak honestly if we're considering binding our lives together." He sat, maintaining careful distance. "Did you ask your mother to do this? Find someone to solve your widow problem?" "No." Liara's voice was flat. "My mother orchestrated this without consulting me, but I understand the political necessity." She turned to face him fully. "I've been isolated for 3 years, Lieutenant, unable to form connections because my status makes me untouchable to my people. The Queen needs me married for succession laws. You need freedom from captivity." She's solving both problems simultaneously. "How do you feel about that?" "Angry, resigned, hopeful perhaps." Liara's ears tilted, uncertainty, Cole guessed. "I loved my bonded partner. Tavin died protecting civilians, and I've been frozen in grief ever since because our law won't let me move forward. If bonding with you allows me to finally move past being defined only by loss, then perhaps anger is acceptable." Cole appreciated her honesty. "I don't want to trap you in an unwanted marriage just to avoid prison, and I don't want a husband who resents being forced into partnership." Liara's smile was slight. "So we're both trapped by circumstances, trying to make the best of impossible choices. What would this actually look like if I agreed? Formal bonding ceremony, shared quarters, public partnership. I would expect respect and courtesy, but I won't demand affection I know you don't feel." Her expression was carefully neutral. "I'm not looking for love, Lieutenant. I had love and it died with Tavin. I'm looking for partnership that eases isolation. Can you provide that?" Cole thought about 20 years in a cell, thought about the exhaustion in Liara's voice when she talked about 3 years of isolation, thought about the test he sensed beneath this conversation, whether he'd treat her with dignity despite coercive circumstances. "Yeah," he said finally, "I can do that." Liara studied him for a long moment. "Then we have an agreement. I'll inform my mother you've accepted." "Just like that. Would you prefer more ceremony around accepting the lesser of two evils?" But her tone was almost amused. "We're both being practical, Lieutenant. At least we can be honest about it." As Cole was escorted back to his cell, he wondered if he just made the best decision of his life or the most complicated. The bonding ceremony happened 3 days later, too quickly for Cole to fully process what was happening. It was formal, ritualistic, conducted in Velrani with translation whispered in his ear by an aide. Liara stood beside him in ceremonial robes, her expression distant and composed. They spoke the required words, exchanged the symbolic tokens, and were declared bonded before witnesses who looked more political than celebratory. Afterward, Liara led him to their new shared quarters, a suite in the royal complex that was significantly nicer than a detention cell, but still felt like a gilded cage. "Your belongings from the detention facility," she said, gesturing to a small bag that contained everything the Velrani had confiscated from him. "And new clothing appropriate for your status. You're no longer a prisoner, so you shouldn't dress like one." Cole examined the formal Velrani attire with skepticism. "I'm going to look ridiculous in this." "Probably, but it's expected." Liara moved through the quarters, showing him the space. "This is your room. That's mine. Shared living area here. Kitchen if you prefer to cook rather than have meals brought. Try not to break anything expensive." Her tone was matter-of-fact, but Cole heard the careful distance in it. She was being polite to a stranger she was legally bound to, nothing more, nothing less. "Thank you," he said, "for agreeing to this. I know it wasn't your choice." Liara paused. It wasn't, but neither was being widowed at 23 and frozen in that status for 3 years. At least this gives me a path forward. She turned to face him. "I won't pretend to be happy about the circumstances, Lieutenant, but I'll treat you with respect and fairness. That's all I can promise. Cole, if we're married, you should probably use my name." "Cole, then." She tested the word. "I'm Liara, not Princess, not Your Highness. Just Liara when we're alone." "Deal." The first weeks were awkward in ways Cole hadn't anticipated. They shared space like careful roommates, navigating each other's routines without real connection. Liara worked most days managing refugee settlement programs, administrative work she seemed genuinely passionate about. Cole, suddenly granted freedom without purpose, found himself bored and restless. "Can I help?" he asked one morning, finding Liara surrounded by datapads and reports. She looked up, surprised. "With what?" "Whatever you're doing. I'm going crazy with nothing to do and you look overwhelmed." "These are resource allocation reports for the northern settlements. Refugee populations from the border conflicts need housing, food distribution, medical supplies." She gestured at the organized chaos. "It's logistics and bureaucracy, not exactly exciting. I'm military, logistics is half my job." Cole moved closer, examining the reports. "You've got a bottleneck in your supply chain, see here. Distribution is centralized, but your populations are scattered. You'd be better with hub-and-spoke model." Liara stared at him. "You understand supply chain management?" "Yeah. You don't keep armies functioning without understanding how to move resources efficiently." Cole pulled up a datapad. "Want me to show you what I mean?" They spent the next 4 hours reorganizing her distribution system, and Cole watched Liara's surprise transform into engaged interest. She was brilliant at the administrative side, understanding the political and cultural factors he'd never considered, while he brought practical logistics experience she lacked. "This will work better," she said finally, reviewing the revised system. "How did you see the problem so quickly?" "Fresh eyes, you've been too close to it." Cole set down the datapad. "I can keep helping if you want. Gives me something useful to do. I'd appreciate that." Liara's smile was brief but genuine. "Thank you." Over the following weeks, they developed a working rhythm. Cole helped with logistics while Liara handled the political aspects of refugee management. They started having actual conversations about the work, about the border conflicts that created the refugee crisis, about their respective frustrations with bureaucracy. "Your military background shows," Liara observed one evening over dinner. "You think in terms of efficiency and clear objectives. Your diplomatic training shows. You think in terms of relationships and long-term consequences." Cole smiled. "We balance each other. We do." She looked surprised by the realization. "I didn't expect that." "Expect what?" "That you'd actually help. That you'd care about refugee settlement when you could just enjoy your freedom." Liara's ears tilted forward, curiosity. "Why do you care?" "Because I'm here and I can help, and letting people suffer when you can prevent it seems wrong." Cole shrugged. "Same reason I stayed behind during the extraction. Someone has to." Liara was quiet, studying him with an expression he couldn't read. Tavin would have said something similar. It was the first time she'd mentioned her late partner directly. Cole waited, letting her continue if she wanted. "He died protecting civilians during a border conflict, stayed behind to cover an evacuation." Her voice was controlled but carried old pain. "Everyone celebrates his sacrifice. They build monuments and tell stories. But I'm the one frozen in place because of it, unable to move forward." "That's not fair to you," Cole said quietly. "No, but fair doesn't factor into tradition." Liara stood abruptly. "I should rest. Thank you for your help today." She left before Cole could respond, and he sat alone wondering if he'd said something wrong. The next morning he found Liara in the gardens, sitting on the same bench where they'd first met. She looked exhausted. "Didn't sleep?" he asked. "Memorial event for Tavin today. They happen quarterly. I'm expected to attend and be the graceful widow, celebrating his sacrifice while pretending I'm not angry about being trapped by it." Her laugh was bitter. "I'm a terrible person for resenting someone who died protecting others." "You're not terrible. You're human. I mean, you know what I mean." Cole sat beside her. "You can grieve him and still be angry about the circumstances. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Tell that to my culture." Liara's control cracked, tears forming despite obvious attempts to stop them. "I loved him. I miss him. And I'm furious that his death turned me into a symbol rather than a person." Cole didn't try to fix it or offer platitudes. He just stayed, quiet presence in the garden, while Liara cried for the first time in probably years. When she finally composed herself, he offered his handkerchief. "Thank you," she said, wiping her eyes, "for not leaving. Where would I go? Most people leave when I'm emotional. It's uncomfortable for them." She looked at him directly. "You stayed. You're not a symbol, you're a person who lost someone and deserves to grieve however you need." Cole met her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere, Liara." Something shifted in her expression, surprise, maybe gratitude. "Why?" "Because you're my partner. Circumstances sucked, but we're stuck with each other. Might as well actually be there for each other." Liara was quiet for a long moment, then took his hand. Not romantically, just connection. "Thank you, Cole." They sat together in the garden, holding hands while she faced another memorial event, and Cole realized that their forced bond was becoming something more complicated, something that might actually be partnership. 4 months into their bonding, Cole had settled into a routine that felt surprisingly normal. He worked with Liara on refugee programs during the day, trained in the Royal Guard facilities to stay sharp, and spent evenings sharing meals and increasingly personal conversations. They'd become genuine friends, which was more than either had expected from a forced political arrangement. Then the challenge came. "It's a political faction questioning the validity of our bonding," Liara explained, reviewing the official documents with obvious frustration. "They're claiming it was coerced, that you married me under duress to escape imprisonment. Therefore the bonding isn't legitimate under traditional law." "They're not wrong about the coercion part," Cole pointed out. "I know. But if they succeed, you could be re-imprisoned as an enemy combatant, and I'll be returned to widow status." Liara's ears flattened, distress. "We have to defend this publicly. Convince the council that our bonding is genuine." Cole thought about what genuine meant when your marriage started as a deal to avoid prison. What do they need to hear? That you chose this freely. That I'm a willing partner, not a victim of my mother's political maneuvering. She looked at him seriously. "Can you say that honestly?" "Yeah." The answer came easier than Cole expected. "I can." The council hearing was formal, intimidating, and designed to make Cole feel like he was on trial again. Liara sat beside him, her expression calm despite the tension radiating through her posture. Various council members questioned them, some hostile, some neutral, all skeptical. "Lieutenant Harper," the lead counselor said, "you were given a choice between marriage and imprisonment. How can such a choice be considered free?" Cole thought about the careful answer, the political one. Then he thought about Liara sitting beside him, about 4 months of genuine partnership, about the person she'd become to him beyond the deal that brought them together. "The initial offer was made under duress," he said clearly. "I won't pretend otherwise. But my choice to honor this bond daily, that's genuine. I could go through the motions, treat this as a transaction, maintain polite distance while counting the days until I'm legally free. Instead, I work with Liara on refugee programs because I believe in what she's doing. I stay when she's grieving because she deserves support. I defend this bond now because somewhere in the forced proximity, it became real." The counselors looked surprised by his bluntness. One turned to Liara. "And you, princess, do you share this sentiment?" Liara stood, her royal bearing making the counselors straighten. "I was not consulted when my mother made this arrangement. I was angry about being used as a political solution. But these months with Cole have taught me something important. Sometimes the bonds we choose freely disappoint us, while bonds we resist become exactly what we needed. She looked at Cole. He treats me with more respect and genuine partnership than many who courted me freely ever demonstrated. If this bond is invalid because it started under coercion, then we invalidate every political marriage in our history, including most of your own. Her smile was sharp. Are you prepared to make that argument? The challenge was dismissed within the hour. As they left the council chamber, Liara took Cole's hand, a gesture that had become natural over months of partnership. "Thank you for defending us," she said quietly. "Thank you for doing the same." Cole squeezed her hand. "Did you mean what you said about this becoming what you needed?" Liara stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "Yes, but it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because moving past Tavin's memory feels like betrayal. Because I'm afraid of caring about someone and losing them again. Because being vulnerable is exhausting." Her ears tilted back, uncertainty mixed with fear. "I've been safe in grief, Cole, frozen but safe." "Vulnerability isn't failure," Cole said gently. "It's courage. And you're the bravest person I know, managing a widow status for years, defending your right to move forward, building refugee programs while your own life was stuck." He paused. "You don't have to be vulnerable. I won't pressure you. But I'm here if you want to be." Liara was quiet, her hand still in his, her expression cycling through emotions too complex to name. "I've been feeling things," she admitted finally. "About you, about us, but I didn't know if I was allowed to." "Allowed to what?" "To want this to be real, to want partnership that's more than political arrangement." She met his eyes. "To want you." Cole felt his breath catch. "I've wanted you for weeks, months maybe, but I thought after Tavin, after everything. After Tavin, I thought I'd never feel this again, never want someone the way I want you." Liara moved closer. "But somewhere between forced proximity and refugee logistics, you became the person I look for in the mornings. The one I want to share things with. The one I trust with my grief and my anger and my fear." "We started with a coercive bargain," Cole said. "I don't want you to feel pressured. You're an idiot." Liara's smile was soft. "I'm choosing this. Actively. Not because law demands it or politics require it, but because I want to." "Is that clear enough?" "Very clear." Cole pulled her closer, his hands gentle despite the intensity of feeling. "I'm choosing this too. Choosing you. Not because prison was the alternative, but because you're brilliant and kind and stronger than you realize, and I want to build a life with you." "Good." Liara kissed him then, and it wasn't tentative or uncertain but deliberate, the action of someone who'd made a decision and was committed to it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole laughed. "That's definitely real. Definitely." Liara rested her forehead against his. "I'm still scared." "Me too. But scared together is better than safe and alone." They stood in the corridor outside the council chamber, holding each other and choosing partnership that had started as transaction, but evolved into something neither could have predicted. That evening, Queen Myra summoned Cole to her private study. He went expecting political discussion, but instead found the queen looking almost satisfied. "You passed," she said without preamble. "Passed what?" "The test. When I offered you marriage instead of imprisonment, I wasn't just solving a political problem. I was testing your character." Myra gestured for him to sit. Liara needed someone who would honor her agency within impossible circumstances. Someone who wouldn't use coercion as excuse for cruelty or indifference. "You proved you would respect her, support her, defend her, not because you were forced to, but because you chose to." Cole processed this. "You gambled with your daughter's happiness to test a prisoner. I gambled that the man who stayed behind to cover his team's escape had honor worth trusting." Myra's smile was slight. "And I was right. You gave Liara what she needed most, partnership that values her as a person rather than a symbol." "She gave me the same," Cole said. "We saved each other in different ways." "Yes, that's what good bonds do." Myra stood. You're no longer a prisoner, Lieutenant Harper. You're my son through bonding, a prince consort by law, and more importantly, the partner my daughter chose despite every reason to refuse. Honor that choice." "I will," Cole promised. Every day. Later that night, lying beside Liara in the quarters that had stopped feeling like a cage and started feeling like home, Cole marveled at the impossible journey from captivity to partnership. "What are you thinking?" Liara asked, her head on his shoulder. "That your mother is terrifying and brilliant. She's the queen, it's her job." Liara smiled. "What else?" "That I'm grateful for the forced choice that led here. For your honesty about not wanting love but needing partnership. For every complicated moment that built this." Cole turned to face her. "For you, I'm grateful too." Liara kissed him softly. "For the human who could have just served his sentence, but chose to honor a bond he didn't ask for. For the partner who stayed when I was grieving. For choosing me when you had every reason not to." They fell asleep tangled together. Two people who'd been forced into partnership, but chose to make it real. The bond that started as coercion had become genuine through time, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable with someone who proved worthy of that vulnerability.